I welcome you to our annual 9/11 Memorial Service. For the past 18 years, we've held this service on the anniversary of that terrible day in 2001. The day our country came under a brutal, vicious, and despicable attack on our democracy, our freedom, and our very lives. This year, we face yet another threat, the coronavirus. And like so many things over the past 6 months, it would have been very easy for us to cancel the event this year. We had a really good excuse. The pandemic of the century, the biggest disaster of our lifetime after 9/11. But if you look at the bottom of your programs, at the bottom of the itinerary, what do you see printed there? Our motto, never forget. And so with great and determined effort from our 9/11 committee, our honor guards, with the help of METV and many others, we are here an entire generation later to remember that horrible day and to honor our fallen as we promised we would. 3 years ago, Hurricane Irma tried to make us fail. Today it's COVID-19. Tomorrow, some other disaster will come our way and will try to make us fail. But folks, we're in the disaster business. This is what we do, to make order out of chaos, to give hope to the hopeless, and to shine a light in the darkness for those who are lost. That's what our heroes in New York did on September 11, 2001. They are doing what we're all here to do, and that is why we will continue to remember, honor, and respect the ultimate sacrifice that they made that day, now and for generations to come. We'll begin our service today with an invocation from Pastor Brian Royer of the Parish Passion Church. Please stand.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, 19 years ago on this day, September the 11th, was seared into the American memory. 19 men attacked us with a brutal, brutal heart. In our nation's history, we'll never forget it. They murdered people of color, creeds, and nationalities and made war upon our entire free world. Sadly, 9/11 has become a part of our modern generation, Pearl Harbor. All of us know where we were on that day, Lord. Lord, on that awful day, we also witnessed something so strong, the spirit of the American. Ordinary citizens rising to the occasion and responding with extraordinary acts of heroism. Courage in office workers trapped on high floors of burning skyscrapers who called home to their last words to their family would be comforted and were loved. Bravery of the Pentagon staff who made it out of the flames and smokes and then ran back inside the buildings to answer the cries for help. And we saw the courage of passengers aboard Flight 93 who recited the 23rd Psalms and then charged the cockpit, saving an untold number of lives that were on the ground. Dear Heavenly Father, on this day we remember the innocent who were lost their lives, and we pay tribute to those who gave their lives so that others might live. For many of our citizens, the wounds of that morning remain fresh. Firefighters and police officers still choke up at the memory of their fallen comrades. We also remember the sacrifices made by our nation's armed forces to keep us safe. Every one of our troops are volunteers, and since the attacks of September 11th, more than 2 million Americans have stepped forward to put on the nation's uniform. Over 50,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen have suffered terrible injury, and over 6,000 have given the ultimate sacrifice in the defense of freedom. America cherishes their memories, and we pray for their families. May we never forget on that day, we did not focus on nationality, wealth, race, or education. We focused on the humanity and love for our freedom and for America. And out of that suffering, we resolved to honor every man and woman lost, and we seek their lasting memorial in a safer and more hopeful world. In Jesus' mighty name, and everybody prayed and said, Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. We have some opening comments today. First, I'd like to call up the mayor of the city of Bradenton, Wayne Poston.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to thank everyone for coming. Been here every time we've done this, and the city of Bradenton is very proud of our responsibility we have to those people who lost their lives and those families from 911. We have a special connection. We have had lots of folks that were involved into Bradenton. As a matter of fact, we hosted starting out 20 widows, and they came for several years. And as their lives changed and they went to do things, the group started getting smaller and smaller, and there were 10 the last time they came. So I want to thank you for remembering and living up to Bradenton's pledge and my personal pledge that we will never forget what happened on 911. So thank you all again. Appreciate it.
Some opening comments from the city of Palmetto, Mayor Shirley Gruber Bryant.
Thank you. Today, I brought a proclamation to share with you, but I also just wanted to make a couple of comments just from my heart to you. It's very important to me that not only do we not forget, but that we educate future generations. What's so significant is there's so many that have been born since that day that don't know and that don't understand that America was under attack. And if you don't learn from your history, then you are bound to have it occur again. That was a horrific event on September 11th, 2001. And I hope that we never have that again. But I want to say thank you to everyone that is in any profession that runs into the line of fire rather than run away, because we need to have all your backs and we need to appreciate you and understand what all you sacrifice on a daily basis. But I think today's very significant, and hopefully we'll all use it as a tool to teach our younger generations. Don't let this happen again. Thank you. And with that, I will read my proclamation from the City of Palmetto. Proclamation, City of Palmetto. Whereas we will never forget the terrible events of September 11th, 2001, and the unspeakable act that forever shattered our innocence, nor will we forget how the American people, especially firefighters, law enforcement, and emergency service personnel, responded with heroism and bravery and brought a renewed sense of national pride and love of country. And whereas on that day our definition of hero was forever changed, when firefighters, police, and emergency service workers paid the dearest price as they rushed into perilous duty, prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. Whereas we will always remember the first victims of the War on Terror, we have also vowed to move on, use that day as an opportunity to celebrate our public servant heroes and give thanks for the important and courageous work they do and have done every day before and since September 11th, 2001. And whereas it may have taken a tragedy to open our eyes to the everyday heroes in our midst, we go forward from that fateful day more aware and ever more grateful for the selfless acts performed on our behalf on a daily basis, and view it as our collective privilege to honor their courage, commitment, and service. And whereas by a joint resolution approved December 18, 2001, the Congress has designated September 11th of each year as Patriot Day, to remember the innocent victims and pay tribute to the valiant firefighters, police officers, and emergency service personnel who risked their lives so that others might live. Whereas by a joint Now, therefore, I, Shirley Gruber Bryant, Mayor of the City of Palmetto, Florida, as a tribute to our heroes, do hereby proclaim proclaim September 11, 2020 as Patriot Day in the city of Palmetto, Florida, and I call upon all citizens to observe September 11th with appropriate ceremonies and memorial services, and direct all units of government to display the flag at half-staff and to observe a moment of silence at 8:46 a.m. to honor the innocent victims of September 11th, 2001. Thank you all. Thank you for being here, and God bless the USA.
Some comments from our Florida House District 71 representative, Will Robinson.
Good morning. September 11th, 2020, today. It's amazing to think that we are a generation of time from that fateful day, 19 years ago. But every year, I remember two words, and hopefully we all remember these two words: honor and remember. Honor. Today we honor the men and women in uniform, many of whom are here today. Our police officers, our firefighters, our military. They put their lives in the line for us every day, especially in this time of divisiveness. We need to support those that support us. We need to honor them. But we also remember. We remember 19 years ago, the 3,000 lost of all religions, of all races. We had mothers, fathers, sons, daughters lost. Many were injured. And certainly we remember those brave firefighters and folks in uniform that went up the Trade Center stairs to uncertain issues, many of whom did not come home to their family. So we honor and remember today. And I'd like to close with the last two paragraphs from President George W. Bush's speech, September 11th, in the Oval Office. Tonight, I ask your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray that they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day for all Americans, for every walk of life, to unite in our resolve of justice and peace. America stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget that day, yet we will go forward to defend our freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, President Bush, for those comforting words 19 years ago. Today, on the 19th anniversary of our nation's most horrific terrorist attack, we honor and remember. God bless.
Closing out our opening comments this morning, Florida House District 73 Representative Tommy Gregory.
I wonder where you are today. Mentally, where are you today? Where is America mentally? Are we worried with personal concerns? Maybe we're worried about COVID. Maybe we're worried about the current state of our country and the political discourse. Maybe you're scared about those things. Maybe you're angry about the virus or the loss of a job. Or maybe you're just angry that you have to wear a mask. But I think it's important that we gather today and celebrate what is amazing about this country. We are the most exceptional country in the history of the world because of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. our principles and what we believe in. But we are the greatest country in the history of the world because of the sacrifices of those brave men and women that take care of us, whether they are in the military or first responders or firefighters or one of those 343 firefighters that lost their lives 19 years ago. Making America the greatest country in the world because they gave their lives so that others may live. So whatever concerns you have, whatever's worrying you, whatever you might be angry about, take this time to memorialize them, to honor them, and to remember that this truly is the most exceptional and the greatest country in the history of the world because of their sacrifices. Thank you for being here today.
Will you please stand for the presentation from our honor guards, Manatee County Emergency Services and Manatee County Sheriff's Office. Please remain standing for the national anthem by Jordan Becknell, Bayside Church. Please remove your cats.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light, and what so proudly we hail at the twilight last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Thank you. You may be seated. Thanks, Jordan. You got away before we could. Thanks to VFW Post 10141 for their assistance in that presentation as well. Our next series of speakers come from the emergency services. And our first speaker, I'm proud to introduce, as I mentioned in the opening comments, nationwide we've been facing another disaster this year. And the person leading our emergency services in that disaster effort in Manatee County is Jake Sauer, the Director of Public Safety.
Good morning, Mayor Bryant, Mayor Poston, dignitaries, elected officials, and especially colleagues. 19 years after our nation was attacked, the events of September 11, 2001 may be fading in the minds of many Americans. But for those of us who spend our lives in the service of others, be it in the fire service, law enforcement, public safety, or the military, the memories of those terrorist attacks that took so many lives remain fresh every year. We remember the 343 New York City firefighters and paramedics killed that day while rushing into the Twin Towers as everybody else was rushing out. We remember the 23 NYPD officers and 37 Port Authority police officers killed. We remember the 125 civilians and military personnel killed at the Pentagon. And we remember the nearly 3,000 civilians who perished in the towers and the 4 airliners that day. As the years pass since that fateful day, as they always will, I think it is important we continue to reflect, study, and improve on how we, as first responders, prepare and react to those tragedies. It is our duty to learn from the problems encountered by those responding to the towers and the Pentagon, so that lives lost were not in vain, and future first responders are better prepared and equipped to handle such tragedies today. As we reflect on the needless tragedy that occurred that day, I thought it would be fitting to look at how those brave men and women affected change across the nation and right here in our own community. One of the main hindrances to the first responders that day was the lack of interoperability and communication. Firefighters, police officers, and paramedics working on completely different radio systems were unable to communicate with each other. Each agency's computer-aided dispatch system was also different from the next, preventing information sharing because of the communication breakdown. Little real-time intelligence was relayed from the scene to command posts or communication centers. The responding agencies had valuable information to share during that response, but no way to effectively communicate it with each other. Today, Manatee County's first responders benefit from this lesson, and many others learn from the responses to the World Trade Center, Pentagon on 9/11. Our new public safety communications radio system has been installed, allowing all first responders to communicate across all platforms, both within our county, as well as surrounding areas when assistance is needed. This platform has been strengthened to ensure communication capabilities endure between responders and incident command while users are inside buildings. Our communication centers located throughout the county have consolidated their computer-aided dispatch systems. This unified CAD system processes information for all first responders on a single platform, streamlining communications that gives the deputy or officer, the firefighter, and the paramedic the same information at the same time to increase situational awareness and improve response. Our multiple fire districts, law enforcement agencies, and EMS have worked together to strengthen interoperability between our agencies. And this is to increase communication on emergency scenes and establish mutual aid protocols. Our strong bond unites us as we work toward the common good for all our first responders, citizens, and visitors of Manatee County. These are all improvements we've made locally since the 9/11 attacks. I reflect on these improvements because those who responded on that tragic day, both those living and those who were lost, changed the way we operate for the better. But the change should not stop there. We owe it to these brave men and women to continue reflecting, learning, and improving how we respond to tragedies such as 9/11 each and every day. Our industry will soon see even more improvements to communications, technology, and infrastructure that place situational awareness, information, and command structures at the forefront of every response. A new cloud-based computer-aided dispatch platform will enable communications centers to operate anywhere during a large-scale event, or even outside of the county in the event of a hurricane or disaster. A new IP-based 911 call platform that once could only relay voice data in the form of a telephone call will soon relay video, pictures, and data directly to the first responders or command post through smartphones or devices readily available at the scene. This enables them to gather real-time intelligence to inform how they respond. Callers from the scene of an event will be able to send images, video, sound, and other data to 911 telecommunicators, who will disseminate this detailed scene information to first responders and command operations before they even arrive. In the future, callers reporting an incident in a high-rise or first responders in trouble in any location will no longer need to communicate exactly where they are in order to receive help. We will obtain their coordinates directly from their device, including what floor they're on in a building, so that all without us asking. New camera monitoring platforms that artificial intelligence will allow law enforcement to survey cameras located throughout the community to detect events occurring even before a 911 call is placed. Drone programs in place now will allow command centers and first responders a bird's eye view of events in order to make response decisions without placing first responders in direct harm. Today, we are actively working toward all of these advancements here in our community. We hope that no tragedy like September 11, 2001 will strike our country again. But if it does, our response capabilities will be greatly enhanced. And we will remember what the first responders at the Twin Towers and the Pentagon endured that started us on this path. As the years continue to pass since 9/11, it's also important that we as leaders continue to bestow what we learned on the next generation of first responders. Many first responders just stepping into this field today were young enough only to hear of the things that occurred that awful day. Some of these first responders are even children of those lost on 9/11. To those young first responders who are coming up the ranks, I challenge you to learn from the leaders you have today. They have seen things, they know things, and they have insight about how and why today's operational procedures were established because of 9/11. Take that knowledge and continue the hard work those before you have begun in your agency, career, and community. Leaders, I challenge you to learn from those new to the service, because each generation looks at processes and problems differently. Listen to them, hear them out, and remember that all of us can continue to affect change for the better to honor the legacy of those who died on 9/11. Thank you.
My takeaway was listen to the old guys. I appreciate that. I think I'm one of them now. But also, there's a lot of truth to listening to the new and younger generation coming up. One of the advantages, many advantages of Jake being our public safety director is he was the chief of our emergency communications center. So he knows the technology and he continues to lead us through the latest and greatest, as you heard. And we don't need a 9-year-old to do that for us. Thank you. First I wanted to make a little comment, and there's a lot going on this year, a lot. And one of the things to remember is that on 9/11, there's a lot of focus on the fire service because of the numbers of firefighters that were killed that day. But there were also law enforcement officers that were killed that day. And they're not to be forgotten either. There's a lot going on right now with law enforcement, but please remember them as well for their sacrifice on that day. And representing our law enforcement brothers, Deputy Jared Leggett from the Manatee County Sheriff's Office will be our next speaker.
.343, 71, and 8. These are the numbers of the first responders that lost their lives that day. Firefighters, law enforcement, and paramedics. This number continues to grow as long-term medical issues claim the lives of those that faced the terror that day. These heroes all did one thing that the public did not. They ran into the towers after the planes hit, while over 14,000 civilians in the towers tried to get out. As a nation, we lost so much that day. 2,977 human lives, our innocence, our invulnerability, our security. It changed every life in the nation on one crisp, beautiful fall morning. Our world has never been the same since. We have new agencies to protect our homeland. We took the fight to the terrorists. We implemented safety procedures and changes in how we do everyday things that we had never considered before that day. We got back into the human intel business and have prevented other major attacks here in our great country. But one thing that hasn't changed is the nature of the 343, the 71, and 8. The first responders still do those same tasks every day without hesitation. We run toward the danger that causes others to flee. We honor our heroes, lost that fateful day with memorials in hundreds of cities around the nation. We place numbers on fire trucks, on ambulances, so we never forget. Never had the first responder community lost so many so quickly. Entire fire companies were killed in the collapse. They died together as a family. And we, their extended family, all died a bit inside that day. We bowed our heads at memorials. We cried and grieved together for brothers and sisters we never knew. We pulled ourselves up and held our head high as we walk in the footsteps of those heroes. Inwardly, every day we honor their sacrifice by continuing their legacy of those brave men and women. We do not hesitate to go where the danger is. We go knowing that if all goes wrong, we may not go home that night. This is the nature of our calling, and that is exactly what it is, a calling. The desire to protect, to serve, to save, and to help our citizens drives our lives every day and causes us to experience things, to do things that the general public will never see or experience unless it happens to them, and then usually only once, whereas our first responder families deal with it every day. Let us never forget the shock, the disbelief, the anger, the sadness, but also never forget their sacrifice. The pride our nation displayed that very next day, the unity and the respect shown to those who paid the ultimate price for the publics they served. Take pride in your profession as we walk in the shadow of those that we lost that day. Our heroes, the nation heroes, the world's heroes. We will never forget, and we will always remember and honor them on this day of days.
Our next speaker hardly needs any introduction. He's spoken several times during our last 18 memorial services. And he represents a group of folks that have hibernated to Manatee County after the retirement from New York City. And some are here today. I'd like to introduce Garrett Lindgren from New York City Fire Department Rescue 3, who is retired and who was there on 9/11.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. Thank you all for coming out despite the COVID ongoing, whatever it is, stopping a lot of people from doing a lot of things right now. As has been stated many times this morning, we all know nearly 3,000 people were murdered on 9/11, 2001. 60 police officers between NYPD and New York and New Jersey Port Authority. 343 members of the FDNY. The terrorist attacks of 9/11 are still killing first responders 19 years later. The New York City Fire Department's now lost 226 members of the department post 9/11 from exposure to chemicals that were present at the site on that day and in the months following during the rescue and recovery operation. The NYPD has also lost well over 200 members of their department from the same exposures. Year to date, from last September to this, the FDNY has lost 27 more members of the department from 9/11 related illness. I say it every year, I think. The people that committed this heinous attack or attacks on our country had no idea they were going to be anywhere near this effective. I don't think they knew those towers were going to actually fall. I think they wanted to have a high body count, but I think this is beyond their wildest dreams, let alone the fact that 19 years later, they're still killing people as a result of that attack. What I also wanted to address today was we hear the phrase never forget when we refer to 9/11. We hear it all the time. Some people understand what never forget means. Others just use it because it seems like it's the thing to do. A lot of our politicians use that phrase. Many mean it and hold it dear to their heart, and they're very patriotic. Others just say it in passing, and then their actions show otherwise. This year, New York City's mayor canceled all remembrance services for 9/11. And think about that for a second. That's where the most carnage from 9/11 occurred, New York City. He blamed COVID. He tried to cancel the Towers of Light, which is a tribute that's been done, I believe, since 2002. Basically, it's lights that are shined into the sky that take the place of the two towers of the World Trade Center. Also because he felt that there was a risk of COVID for the local 3 electricians that would have to set up and wire in the lighting. He also tried to cancel the annual family reading of the names. The families of those who fell on 9/11 each year go to the site and they read off the names of every person that was killed on 9/11. A really great, amazing, patriotic man named Frank Siller, who started the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which I'm sure many or most of you know of. It's an amazing charity. He spoke up immediately. He went on TV. He said he wouldn't stand for that he would make it happen, that there would be Towers of Light, that there would be a reading of the names, that if need be, the foundation, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, would pay for it. He shamed the politicians into backing down and allowing the Towers of Light, which incidentally I read the other day, it took 4 local 3 electricians about a half hour or an hour to put it together. Their union came out immediately when they were blamed for not having the Towers of Light, saying that they would absolutely take care of it, that they had nothing to do with that fear of getting sick. They went on to mention that they've been working continuously during the COVID pandemic at all their job sites. Why suddenly this job site was different, I don't know. I'd have to believe it's a political statement. Frank Siller, by the way, runs the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. His brother, Stephen Siller, was a New York City firefighter. He was assigned to Squad Company 1 in Brooklyn. They were responding to the World Trade Center that morning. They got tied up in traffic in the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, and he got off the rig in full gear and ran through the tunnel to the site. and was subsequently killed in the collapse. And his brother started this foundation in his name. They build homes for the families of fallen soldiers, as well as for the families of fallen police, fire, and EMS personnel. It's an amazing group, and he is a very strong, very patriotic man. For doing what he did to make this happen this year is wonderful. At the same time, it's shameful what the mayor tried to do. To add insult to injury, the mayor of New York City announced that the anti-police protests could continue. They were the only gatherings that were permitted to occur in New York City because of COVID. Restaurants are closed, bars are closed, no remembrances for 9/11, no towers of light, but people are allowed to riot in the streets. Because although they're referring to these things as protests, they're not protests, they're riots. Numerous acts of arson being committed. Rocks and bottles thrown at police, rocks and bottles thrown at the firefighters when they respond to extinguish the fires that these people are setting. And the mayor of New York very happily said, continue, you can do it, it's okay, it's more important. He actually said that it was a different concept than everything else that was being canceled, that it was important and that people had a right to speak out about that. But the families of the fallen 9/11 responders and the people that were murdered in the towers don't have that right, apparently. And just to add more insult to injury, he decided that it would be okay to have the MTV Music Awards in New York City, which just happened on August 30th. So that also apparently is more important than all these people that were murdered on 9/11 and all the people that are dying since. I'd like to say it left me speechless, but everyone that knows me realizes that I'm never speechless. Our police, fire, and EMS place themselves in harm's way potentially every time they put their uniforms on. They go out the door, they have no idea what they're going to confront when they get to an incident. Something as simple as an ambulance responding to a non-emergency call for a sick person can get there and find out that the person is sick, but they're also possibly a violent, emotionally disturbed person with a weapon. They have no idea. They walk in the door and they can easily not walk out that door. We all know the risks that our police officers face. Those risks are magnified now so much more because of the target that's been put on their back by so many, unfortunately, so many elected officials. And I'm not calling out all our elected officials because there are many who are very, very pro-police, law enforcement, but many who have spoken out against our law enforcement personnel. They've villainized them and they've incited violence against them. Everyone sees the numbers of police officers that are being killed in the line of duty. They're being shot, they're being stabbed, they're being set up. A good deal of it, I believe, is coming directly from these people who are speaking out against the police. It's fine to have disagreement. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. If there is a problem with a police department, address it, take care of it, and fix it. But the majority of our police officers are family people. They go to work, they serve the people, they try to keep them safe, and they want to go home to their family at the end of the day. They in no way reflect the image that's being portrayed of them. It's got to stop. Another 9/11 could happen. When 9/11 happened, police and fire ran toward that scene. Off-duty police and fire ran toward that scene. So many were killed, so many were injured, so many were sickened. They did it for everyone. They didn't check to see if anybody in there was a convicted felon. They didn't care what the person looked like, what God they believed in. They risked everything. A lot of them sacrificed everything. It's unacceptable in this day and age for anyone, let alone a person who's elected to represent us, to go out and incite riots and incite violence. Again, our firefighters are also being exposed to a lot of this. They're being attacked. They're having things thrown at them. They're being set up. And it's most likely because they're looked upon as just another city agency and a bunch of people in uniforms. And it's got to stop. It's got to change. As I said before, this terrorist thing is not done. The FBI and many of the police joint terrorism task forces have thwarted numerous potential terrorist attacks since 9/11, and that's factual. So there are people out there that still want to do harm to us, and if they do, we're going to dial 911 and everybody's going to come running. So we should be supporting these people and honoring these people. If there's a problem, if there's a disciplinary issue, which I defy you to find any job description anywhere where there aren't a couple of people who don't belong in that job, that they get singled out, they go through their process, their due process, and they figure out whether or not they belong on that job. But to put everybody in one bucket like this and to say they're all evil is so far from true. It's disgusting, and it's sickening, and it's dangerous for all of us. I guess what I'll leave off with is maybe word will get back to these folks. That never forget means a whole lot. And probably the most important thing it means is never forget the sacrifice that so many made that morning so that others might live. And those who did that are representative of those who are still doing those jobs now. So please, I know everyone here supports our first responders or you wouldn't be here. But please spread the word. Don't be afraid to. Don't be afraid to speak out. Don't be afraid to step up if you see a law enforcement officer or a firefighter or an EMS person in trouble. And let's pray that that things get better, because things couldn't be much worse right now in this country. I also would be remiss if I didn't say this. I just glanced over there and saw Mayor Poston. I really want to thank the mayor and his council for allowing us to be here this morning. We're honoring people who died in New York City, and we're 1,200 miles away, and he wasn't afraid to let us come out here and socially distance as needed, but not hide in our houses and avoid what today stands for. So thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. It's very much appreciated. And maybe you can call Bill de Blasio and give him a couple of lessons. He might want to hear from you, because he doesn't get it. So anyway, thank you all so much. Please keep all the families of the fallen and all the families and the responders who are still sick today in your thoughts and prayers. And thank you all for being here this morning. It means the world to all of us and our families. So thanks so much. Have a safe day.
Little old Manatee County, we're able to continue honoring those folks from 9/11 and thereafter. So I feel very proud of our 9/11 committee that made this happen today. Chris Melzer, Billy Smith, Bob Mikulski, Mike Williamson, Garrett as well, Richie Evers, and Daryl's back there somewhere. With law enforcement, as was pointed out, this has been a bad year for our first responders, but no one more than our law enforcement community that's going on right now. And so when you see our brothers in blue and green, please thank them for their service. They probably don't get a lot of that these days. So prior to 9/11, for many years we would honor the fallen firefighters of our nation, of our state, and locally in front of the historical courthouse on the steps on the first Sunday of Fire Prevention Week in October. And after 9/11, we combined that into this service. And so as we switch gears to conduct that service, I'm going to introduce Bob Mikulski, the training officer for East Manatee Fire Rescue, and he'll be leading that portion.
Good morning. Same face every year. I'm Bob Mikulski with East Manatee, and I'd like to say it's an honor or privilege again to represent those individuals that gave their all in 2019. As we all know, this ceremony is for 2019, but it'd be wrong of me if I didn't address 2020, where our deaths have already surpassed last year's numbers. So, it was a lot of it was due to the COVID, and we actually did lose a former fire chief, Paul Deese III, from COVID this year. So nationally, we had 57 person. The state of Florida, we had 2 individuals, Dwayne Bradshaw, Escambia County Fire Rescue, Scott Newman, Martin County Fire Rescue. Locally, we had Henry Sheffield, East Manatee Fire Rescue Fire Chief. And let us never forget Manatee County's line of duty to death, Brian Reed, West Manatee Fire Rescue. Stand by for a special announcement.
The Manatee County Emergency Communications Center pauses to remember those 57 fire personnel lost in the line of duty nationwide during 2019, including Dwayne Bradshaw and Scott Newman from the state of Florida. We also remember the passing of Fire Chief Henry Sheffield, and we remember and honor the line of duty death of firefighter Brian Reed in 2001. May the road rise to meet them, may the wind always be at their back, and may the Lord hold them in the palm of his hand until we meet again. KNDM 569, Manatee County Fire Radio.
We're now going to do a dove release. Chief Whitehurst is going to represent the Sheffield family. So with the dove release, the doves represent the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. The single dove represents the soul. So they'll release a single dove from Chief Whitehurst, and moments later, they're going to release the rest of the flock. Well, what that flock is actually the angels, to go find the soul that's still flying up there in the air, and will take the soul to the heavens. So that's what this represents. Now that we'd like to present the wreath to the memorial. This represents law enforcement, fire service, EMS, and the military. Everybody please stand.
Please remain standing as Pastor Jeff Archer from the Church of the Cross comes forward with our benediction.
Would you bow with me in prayer, please? Heavenly Father, today we come to you and we're asking for your blessing as we remember 9/11. For so many years, those numbers meant a call for help, but now they remind us of something much more, the day of the worst terrorist attack on America. We're here today to remember the attacks and honor those we lost. For many, today is mixed with emotions. We hurt deeply for those whose lives were lost and for those who live with the loss of a loved one. We remember and honor nearly 3,000 people who died that day. We're humbled by the bravery of the first responders and all who gave all to rescue and assist others. We remember how the world reacted, supporting us, and even declaring us one people. God, remind us to see the frailty, the beauty, and the value of life. Unite our hearts again, I ask. Keep our hearts tender. Forgive us, I ask, of our shortcomings with one another. And Heavenly Father, may we embrace the prayer that Jesus prayed to you. May they be one as you, Father, are in me. And may we never forget that day. May we focus on your peace, your love. We don't forget those who have gone before us, and that we even learn more so that there are more still perishing because of that attack. God, help them, bless them, comfort them. Help us to focus on humanity and our love for fellow Americans. Lord, call us back to a place in our hearts. Instill us the deepest sense to be that people once again. We lift up all to those of you, God, who have suffered that loss 19 years ago today. And may we continue to heal and to help each other just as we did on that day. And it's in God's name, the name of Jesus, I ask your blessing. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thanks to Captain Matt Talaska from East Manatee Fire Rescue for Amazing Grace. Before we conclude the service today, I'd like to have the chairman of our 9/11 committee, Mike Williamson, come to the microphone.
Good morning, everybody. What an honor and a privilege it is for me to stand before you guys, our Manatee County citizens, our distinguished guests, and our elected officials. At this time, I would like to call forward all the members of the 9/11 Tribute to Heroes Committee, and I'd also like to invite past chairmen Battalion Chief Herb Smith and Fire Chief Tom Hennessy to come forward. Fire Chief Tom Hennessy from Southern Manatee was the first chairman of this committee back in 2002, and I'd like him to share a few words as we remember 9/11.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's hard to believe 19 years since we started this event in 2002. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I'm proud of it. I moved down here in 1979, joined the fire department, and I retired in 2009. As far as this monument goes, just a few words. This monument was the result of hard work, dedication, support, and generosity of all your local emergency workers and citizens of Manatee County. After September 11th, the local emergency workers of this county raised over $70,000 in an effort to build this monument. And also, we supported the New York firefighters by responding to the city after 9/11 and attending as many funeral services as we could in the weeks after the event. But one of the things I'd really like to point out here is in an effort to do this monument, we had to approach the city of Bradenton, the Downtown Development Agency, and of course the mayor's office. And I remember the first couple meetings with the mayor, and I'll never forget him saying, "Let's get it done. Let's do this." He never balked at it, and his support has been overwhelming since that time. I'd like to say that it's been an honor and a privilege to work with the Tribute to Heroes Committee, the emergency workers of this county, and especially Mayor Wayne Poston. I appreciate your... I know this is his last year as our mayor, and I certainly appreciate your hard work, dedication, and devotion to the citizens of Manatee County, and you should certainly be very proud of your accomplishments. Thank you very much, Wayne. And thank you for coming. Okay, thank you,
Mike. In June 20th, 1782, the Second Continental Congress selected the bald eagle as our U.S. national symbol. And their definition back then was that the eagle conveys the powers, messages of the spirit, it's man's connection to its divine, because it flies higher than any other bird. If an eagle has appeared, it bestows freedom and courage to look ahead. The eagle is a symbol of importance, of honesty, integrity, and truthful principles. At this time, can I have Mayor Wayne H. Poston come up? Mayor, I know that you are ending your watch, and we are so proud that you are our leader.
Thank you very much.
And we will never forget. Thank you all.
When you talked about the bald eagle, I thought you were talking about Richie.
If you would all stand in recognition of outgoing Mayor Wayne Poston, and let's give him another round of applause. It's been a long, hot morning. I'll make my closing remarks quick. Next year is the 20th year anniversary of 9/11. We will be here again, and we will be doing more than ever. Thank you for your attendance today. Thank you for those watching on Facebook Live and for those watching the rebroadcast on METV. Y'all be safe. Thank you.
Every year in the morning, prior to the first plane hitting, it really starts coming back to me what was going on that morning. And basically, I was in the kitchen in the firehouse with a bunch of my brother firefighters. And 5 minutes after I left that firehouse, this nightmare began. The first plane hit the North Tower, and basically was off to the races. And that's pretty much what comes back to me, as this morning starts to progress. Honestly, time stood still. We got to the scene. We were in zero visibility. We started to attempt to search for survivors. We heard some firefighters calling for help on their radios. They were trapped underneath fire apparatus. Some of them were trapped under the structure. And we were handed the task of trying to locate them without any landmarks, because everything that had been there a short time before was gone or buried. So we did the best we could. Everyone did what they thought they needed to do and what they knew they needed to do, but I believe the level of shock initially was overwhelming. I think we were all acting on our training, and that was about all. The next thing I knew, it was about 11:30 at night. Honestly, that day was a blur. We worked nonstop, and 11:30 at night, believe it or not, is when we stopped to look for a bottle of water for the first time. And that's when we first took a breath and realized how many folks are missing. Actually, I found out 11:30 that night that I was on the missing list, which triggered me to try to get self-service to call my house, because I knew by then if I was on the missing list that some way or another word was going to get to my family. As I thought, my wife thought I had been killed, because she spoke to me right before we got on scene, and that was right before the second tower fell, and never heard from me again. So that was a very difficult awakening at the end of a horrendous day. Well, initially, we just knew that, so many were missing. As time went by and it became more obvious that none of them were going to be rescued, we did start to find some remains, and as they got identified, funerals began to occur. It started to get to the point where there were too many funerals in a day to go to all of them. And if we were not at a funeral or a memorial service or a wake, we were either in the firehouse responding to calls, or we were on the pile digging for remains. So, the first couple of months, especially after 9/11, was nonstop. I guess it's a testimony to adrenaline and shock, because we all did it. We look back now, we have no idea how we did it, other than what I just said, adrenaline and shock. It's really a big deal. I don't know how well I would deal with this day each year without the support of the folks in the fire service in Manatee County. Many of them have become good friends of mine. As we all say in the fire service, we're all brothers and sisters. That's not just a line, that's a fact. I've been treated so well by the firefighters here in Manatee County since I moved here for all these years. They are truly committed to continuing the concept of never forgetting 9/11, and it means so much to me and my family that I get to spend 9/11 each year in the company of firefighters, some of whom are retired from my job, and many of whom I never worked with, but who are firefighters here. Myself, experiencing the kinds of health issues that I have now from being exposed to the chemicals and the smoke at the site, it made me personally very aware of what was going on, and communicating with many of my brothers from FDNY who also have illnesses, it became pretty apparent that it wasn't going to get better, it was going to get worse. Sadly, quite a few of the good friends of mine have passed over the years from 9/11 illnesses. So when it became apparent that funds were running out several years ago and it appeared nothing was happening in Congress, I got involved to whatever level I could as far as letter writing and doing local TV interviews and speaking out, trying to do my part to raise awareness and to remind the folks that we elect that it's important for them to never forget, not just to use that as a catchy phrase when they talk about 9/11, but to truly never forget. And thankfully they did come through and they did fund health care for 9/11 responders, and but that's in no part my doing. I was a tiny piece of that. There's a lot of people that did a tremendous amount more work than I did for that. Well, I guess there's several reasons. One is to honor the heroism of all who ran toward that disaster, that tragedy that morning, and knowing that they were putting themselves at tremendous personal risk. Another is to remind the people in this country just how real the terrorist threat is. This hasn't stopped. There's been many confirmed attempts since 9/11 that have been thwarted, thankfully, by police department, terrorism task forces, and the FBI. So the terrorist threat is always there. People need to know it and need to understand that they have to be vigilant. Also, it's extremely important this year because we've seen tremendous unrest in our country and a lot of rioting. I know it's being referred to as peaceful protests, but arson's not a peaceful protest. Throwing rocks and bottles at police and firefighters who are responding to these events, those aren't peaceful protests. There's a faction in the political sector that has been inciting hatred toward our police. It's got to stop. The police and firefighters ran toward the towers on 9/11. If it happens tomorrow again anywhere in this country, police and firefighters are going to risk their lives to save everybody. They're not going to ask what protest group you belong to or what race or religion you are. They're going to go in there and risk their life for you. So we need to get back to being one America again and having respect for the people that take care of us and protect us. Well, I appreciate it. I hope that I have a good impression on the young firefighters here. I'm very fortunate prior to COVID becoming an issue that I frequently get invited into local firehouses to have a cup of coffee with the crew, and some of the old timers like me to talk to the young guys and just remind them what a great job it is and a vital job it is to be a firefighter and an EMT, and just remind them how important it is, the service they provide, the risk that potentially is there. And it's an honor for me, and it's also pretty enjoyable. The Firehouse Kitchen played a big part in my life, so it's always great to get back and sit and chat with, as we always say, different faces, same clowns. Well, again, Manatee County has been wonderful over the years when it comes to respect and honor of the commemoration of September 11th. To our local politicians, our fire chiefs, police chiefs, EMS chiefs, and all the personnel that work in the emergency services, as well as all the people in the community, as a 9/11 first responder who has been directly affected in a tremendous way by the events of that day. It's tremendously important for us to not forget. It's very important as a member of that community to feel that folks realize what we went through, what went on, and that it's part of our history now, and that people need to know about it. Our youngsters need to know about it.
Yes, thank you, Charles. And it's a great event every year that Manatee County does. And as time goes on, all of us seem to sometimes forget things. And it's very important as we go forward to always remember what happened to us on September 11, 2001. As it's the first time that really on our soil we felt like we were attacked. And you never want to have that happen again, and you want to keep our government and country moving forward, but you want to always remember so we don't repeat something like that. Right, well, I think that's important because as you look at out here today and you see the people that are here and these firefighters and these families and police officers that come, a lot of their brothers were on the streets of New York City that day. I had a cousin of mine that actually was in one of the towers as the police department got out just before. So, we all have connections to it, and that's important. My cousin actually ended up signing, he was in the reserves and went over it in Baghdad for 2 years. So, I have a little bit more of a connection with the family member, but when you look at these guys out here, their family was there that day, and it's important to them and the city to continue to honor the people that we lost that day. Yeah, and I don't think there's anybody that's probably here today that hasn't met somebody that was either around there or know of it, and they see them. And as people retire to our area, a lot of people come from New York, and we see that. And so it's important to show them and the families of the people that lost their lives that day that we're still here for them. Well, unfortunately, we've got so much social media today and things that go on, we kind of forget some things. And I've got a 10 and 8-year-old grandchildren, and we talked about why. It's not taught as much as it used to be, but it should be maybe a little bit more, the history of our country. And we've got to keep this in the forefront as long as we can, because I think we want those 10 and 8-year-old grandchildren to remember what happened to our country on 9/11. Right. Always honor the people that we know we lost that day, and honor our firefighters and police officers, especially in New York today, but all over the country, because they're there to help us in public service, and public safety is one of the most important things a city government actually manages and make sure we have taking care of our citizens.
Well, it's important to me for this reason. The only reason for local government is public safety, and I've believed that and I've lived that the whole entire time that I've been mayor. I've been mayor since 2000. A community does not function without police, fire, EMS, those people taking care and looking out for us. And one of the things in Bradenton that we do is what I love about it is we take care of each other, we look out for each other, and we have everybody else's back. There are too many, but here's what I'm most proud of. I've been successful because I hired good people, explained to them clearly what their job was, and they went and did that. And I didn't have to act like a police officer making sure they did it. They did it because they knew what was going on. They love the community as I do, and that's how we got to be successful. We can point to lots of things, but I was blessed to have the opportunity, and I'm also blessed that I can step away from it and hope it's in good hands. It's humbling on my part. But we need them, I need them, the community needs them, And I just have tried to show them respect for the 20 years that I've been mayor. It's really that I'm just so thankful for all the support that I've had. And it's been amazing. It's been a great run. People have treated me well because I treated them well. So I can step away from this job, certainly with some sadness, but it's time. And it's time for someone else to do this. I've had a good run. I'm pleased with what we're able to do. And now I'm going to go and just have some fun. Well, what's going to happen now is I'm actually going to get to spend some really quality time with my best friend, my wife, Mickey. So we bought an RV and we're going on the road. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
It's incredible to me that we are a generation of time, 19 years, removed from September 11th, 2001. And every year since then, I think of two words: honor and remember. And it's important that during a day like today, we honor those that currently serve us, our first responders, our firefighters, our police officers. And yet we also remember those that we lost on that very fateful and terrible day 19 years ago. So to me, days like this are exceptionally important to honor and remember those that we hold dear in our hearts. It is incredibly important. It is the most important thing we can do to educate our children and our neighbors about that day, because when time goes by, we tend to forget certain things that happened in history, and we can never forget. That's the phrase, never forget this day. And what does that mean, never forget? Well, remember and honor those that have served us, but don't forget, I'll never forget those planes crashing into the tower, or those folks coming out with smoke in their lungs. And certainly imagine those folks that jumped to their deaths and said to themselves, the better option is jumping than staying in the building and getting probably burned up. Thinking of those images is important because it motivates you to create good public policy and to support those that should be supported, that protect and defend us. Well, Charles, I was born in Bradenton. My dad was born in Bradenton. This is a different community than it was when Mayor Poston started. We're a better community. Think about our downtown. Our downtown was just a business center, and now it's a thriving area with shops and restaurants and bars and areas that people can congregate. So he's done a wonderful thing. We're at the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk was a creation of the mayor and city council, and it's a beautiful area, public park for people to come to. So the mayor has done a wonderful thing with revitalizing downtown and surrounding neighborhoods, and we're going to miss him. I've actually had, I think, 2 mayors in my life, so we're going to have a different mayor come November, but God bless Mayor Poston and his wife, and hopefully they have a long and happy retirement. Well, certainly, God willing, the voters will have a choice, hopefully, to re-elect me in a few weeks. But we will be very busy come Election Day. And after Election Day, we will start with organizational sessions. So we will formally elect our Speaker of the House, and across the rotunda, the Senate will formally elect their Senate President. And we will begin the process of moving into session, which involves committee weeks and organizing committees, and certainly figuring out any gaps in the budget that we may have because of the coronavirus issue. And certainly my top priority, and I believe the House's top priority, and the Governor's top priority, and the Senate's top priority will be to get people safely back to work and get our economy back on track. So I'm sure those two things will be the top 2 things we'll be working on over the next year or so.
Well, it's important that, of course, we never forget. And along with never forgetting, I think one of the important components is that we need to educate the young people, the generations and generations that are coming up that didn't experience 9/11. I think anybody that woke up this morning, you are recalling where you were that morning on September 11th. You can't help but do that. I was thinking about it myself, and I was already reading so many things and comments and expressions of sympathy and love that was being prayers for all the ones, the fallen ones, whether they were just everyday citizens or whether they were our firefighters and our law enforcement and all the first responders. So I think it's critical that we not forget, but not only that, but we remember and we teach our young people what happened that day, because if you don't remember your past, you're bound to repeat it. And we need to set everything in place to not ever have this happen again. We need to support all the first responders, the firefighters, the EMS, our law enforcement. We need to help them be prepared the best they can possibly be for the future. And I would just say thank you to all of them, and God bless all the ones that have been lost and their families that, you know, they've had to give up their lives with their dear loved ones. It just really brought it more and more clear as a reality, because as we watched it on television, you see so many movies that they're made up and just fake, but you're watching that on television, and even at that time, and you know it's really happening, but you're trying to say this couldn't really happen, this couldn't happen here. It brought it right to the forefront to each one of us to hear him talk about that day and what happened. He was on the ground, he was there, and he shared with us the losses that they experienced, the families, and the fact that so many of the children and nephews and nieces and whatever have gone into law enforcement since. So there's a commitment to in Americans that they want to look out for other people and support other people, and they will continue to race into turmoil and heinous events to protect the regular citizens that can't help themselves. I think that's going to continue. That message from me would be, please watch the different ceremonies. Go back and listen to the people that experienced it, and listen to their stories and how they dealt with it and how they're still dealing with it years later. There's still responders from that day and days after that are handling the different issues from the different chemicals and so forth that are still taking their lives, and they're suffering each and every day, and their families are dealing with that. So I would suggest that everybody try to share programs like this, ceremonies like this, and have their children sit down and watch them and tell them and talk to them about what happened on 9/11. It's critical for the future of America. We need to unite. And I think that's part of it, is supporting ceremonies such as this.